The first thing we do is we start at the top with these plastic tie wraps, and you can get really long plastic tie wraps if you want, but I just get the 11 or 14-inch long ones and use a few end to end. And this is going to be sort of your anchor point. This is what you're going to attach the lights to. You see, this way, if you start off with some plastic tie wraps like this, you don't have to put any screws in. I can put lights on this column without using not even one screw or staple or anything, but by using these plastic tie wraps as sort of an anchor point, and then putting these rings up and down the column, and then I lay the lights over the top of it and use smaller tie wraps to attach the lights to the big tie wraps. By doing that, that allows me to not use any screws or nails or staples or anything of that nature. Now these strands that I'm working with are pre-made because I've used these same lights over the course of many years. And if you really did it right, you would probably label these, so like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I have a pretty good idea which one goes where. And so I'm just going to sort of work at trying to get them untangled and then placing them in the right spot. I've got this set up to where I keep the junction in the back. That way it, it looks a little cleaner from the front point of view. And what I'm doing on the back here, once again, is I'm just tie wrapping my cables to the main tie wrap. I get a little tie wrap holding it to the main tie wrap. The way I put these up, I let the light bulbs lay to one side or the other. Okay, when I mention one side or the other, what I mean is all the bulbs are laying to the right hand side like this as they spiral down, or opposite of that, all laying to the left as they spiral down. Whatever the case may be, you just want to make sure they're all laid over the same direction. You need to also choose how you want the spiral to go, whether it spirals from sort of the upper right down this way, or upper left sort of down to the right. And of course, when I say left to right or right to left, I mean, do they come down like that as they come down the column? That would be like a left to right. Or do they come down like this as they come down the column? That'd be like right to left. Another thing you might want to do, if you really wanted to be very particular about this, hang on a minute, is to measure with a tape measure how far apart each strand is from each other. You don't want them to be unevenly spaced. They should be equally spaced apart from each other. In terms of the spacing, let's look at a top view. The way I'm doing the column in the video, I first of all look at this reference point in the middle, and that's where the center column is, and then I go an equal distance back with 4 other strands. Now there's not a good back view, so I just leave this kind of open, and you can do that. If there was a really big window back behind there that the customer always looked through, you would have to come up with a design that went all the way around 360. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you're only concerned about the front view, as long as you go back far back on the sides and making sure these distances here are equal, you're okay. Another thing to consider is I'm using 15-inch spacing, so I'm going to try to use spacing here between the bulbs of probably about 3 inches. The reason the 15-inch spacing, 3-inch spacing is important to me is because, again, let's draw this back in here. The 15-inch spacing refers to the light strands as they come down. So the distance between each bulb on the strand is 15-inch, but the distance between the bulbs on adjacent strands is 3-inch. Here's your 15. And so 3 goes into 15 5 times, so it's just a nice even spacing. If you did use this scenario where you've got 15-inch spacing and the offset is always 3 inches, then you can do it 360 all around. Let's draw that a little better. Then you can do a nice 360 because you would do 1, probably 2, 3, 4, 5. Where each distance is equal distanced. Again, with the 15-inch spacing, 3-inch offset, that spiral would go all the way from the top to the bottom. Each row, the red row and the white row, would spiral all the way to the bottom continuously as you walked around it. You know, you also don't want the spiral to be too close to horizontal. Too close to horizontal or too close to vertical doesn't look good. You want it to be sort of right in the middle. Another thing to consider is this this center, this one here on the front. This is sort of your reference here. You want to make sure the one on the front is perfectly on the front of the column. As far as having the reference point in the middle, to me it just is something that makes sense. Regardless of how you're doing your spacing, you want to pick one point on the column as sort of your reference point, and it makes the most sense to make it the front point. Another reason you want to do that is because these columns, most of them actually taper. Now I'm showing you an extreme view here where it's obviously much wider at the bottom, but most of them, even at their initial appearance, you'd look at it and you'd think, well, they look like it's the same top to bottom. They're usually just slightly bigger at the bottom. You can see I'm adjusting the height of this so that I can get these in the right orientation so that they're all in a row. You want that spiral to be even. You don't want it to kind of bounce up and down as it spirals around. So of course when we talk about an uneven spiral, all I mean is, you know, you don't want it to be like this and then like that. They're not in line that way. You want them to be in a good, more or less straight line, a diagonal line, but straight, if you know what I'm saying. You'll see it bunches up here a little bit. Don't worry about that. What's important is that you get these light bulbs spaced properly.